The moment Officer Travis Keller pulled the stolen wallet from Naomi Brooks' bag, everyone in that little corner store thought they were watching another arrest, but they had no idea they were watching the end of his career. It was 6:17 on a gray Tuesday evening in East Marlow, a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered before sunset, and people had learned to lower their voices whenever a patrol car rolled too slowly past the curb. Rain tapped softly against the front windows of Lewis Market, sliding down the glass in crooked lines while the smell of burnt coffee, wet pavement, and old cardboard filled the narrow aisles. Naomi stood near the counter with a paper cup in one hand and a $5 bill in the other, dressed in a plain brown jacket, dark jeans, and boots still damp from the sidewalk. Nothing about her looked powerful. Nothing about her looked dangerous. And that was exactly why Travis Keller smiled when he stepped through the door. He was tall, broad-shouldered, white, and wearing his uniform like it belonged above everyone else in the room. His badge caught the fluorescent light as he walked straight toward her, not toward the register, not toward the camera above the freezer, not toward the nervous clerk behind the counter. Straight toward Naomi. "Ma'am," he said, though there was no respect in the word. "Open the bag." The store went still. A teenage boy near the chips stopped chewing. An older man by the lottery machine looked down at his shoes. Maya Lewis, the cashier, froze with her fingers hovering above the register keys, her face tightening as if she had seen this scene before and already knew how it would end. Naomi turned slowly. Her eyes moved from Keller's hand resting near his belt to the small black wallet he was already holding between two fingers. That was the first mistake. He had taken it out too quickly, too confidently, like a magician who forgot the audience was watching the trick from the side. "That isn't mine," Naomi said, her voice calm enough to make the silence feel heavier. Keller gave a short laugh and lifted the wallet higher so everyone could see it. "Funny how it always ends up in your bag." A whisper moved. Through the store, not loud, not brave, just a ripple of fear passing from one person to another. Naomi looked at the wallet, then at Keller, then up toward the ceiling where the old security camera blinked with a tiny red light. Keller noticed her glance and his smile widened. "Camera's been acting up all week," he said. "Bad luck for you." But Naomi did not blink. She did not argue. She did not raise her voice or beg the strangers around her to believe her. She only set the coffee cup gently on the counter, as if this were all happening on a schedule she had already memorized. Keller stepped closer. "Hands where I can see them." Maya swallowed hard. The boy by the chips lowered his phone, unsure whether recording would make things worse. Outside, a dark sedan sat across the street with its engine running, windshield wipers moving back and forth in a slow, steady rhythm. Inside that car, Detective Rachel Quinn leaned toward her radio, listening to every word through a hidden feed. Naomi Brooks was not alone. She had never been alone. But Keller did not know that. To him, she was just another black woman in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with no one important coming to help her. He reached for her wrist, guiding her hands behind her back without asking another question. The metal cuffs clicked softly, not loud, but loud enough to make Maya flinch. Naomi's face stayed still. Her breathing stayed even. Keller leaned close, lowering his voice just enough to sound personal and cruel. "You people always have a story." For the first time, Naomi smiled. Not warmly, not with fear, just a small, quiet smile that made Keller's confidence flicker for half a second. Then she said, "Officer Keller, are you sure that's the story you want to tell?" Keller did not like the way Naomi said his name. For a man who had spent years making other people nervous, hearing his own name spoken with calm precision felt like a door opening somewhere he could not see. His jaw tightened, but only for a second. Then the old confidence returned, the kind built from too many complaints that disappeared, too many witnesses who changed their minds, too many supervisors who looked the other way because silence was easier than truth. He turned Naomi toward the front window so the people outside could see her in cuffs, and the shame he wanted to create settled over the store like cold fog. A woman near the bread aisle covered her mouth. The teenage boy finally raised his phone again, his hand shaking as he recorded. Maya Lewis stood behind the counter, eyes glossy, lips pressed together, trapped between what she knew and what she feared. Keller lifted his voice, making sure every person heard him. "This is what happens when you walk into a business thinking nobody is watching." Naomi stared at the rain crawling down the glass. Red and blue lights from Keller's cruiser pulsed across her face, breaking her reflection into pieces. She could feel the cuffs against her wrists, not painful, but tight enough to remind her of every person who had stood where she stood and had not known how to make anyone listen. Keller reached into her bag again, moving slowly now, performing for the room. He pulled out her phone, her keys, a folded receipt, and a small notebook with a plain black cover. His eyes paused on the notebook. Naomi noticed. "Personal journal?" he asked. "Something like that," she said. He flipped it open, but the pages were blank except for grocery items and harmless notes written in neat blue ink. Milk, batteries, coffee, pick up dry cleaning. Ordinary things. Boring things. Exactly what he expected from someone he believed he had already reduced to nothing. He tossed it onto the counter. "You have identification?" Naomi nodded toward her wallet inside the bag. Keller took it out, opened it, and frowned when he saw the driver license. "Naomi Brooks," he read aloud. 38. Lives over on West Delaney. He looked up with a smirk. "Long way from home for a cup of coffee." "It is 4.2 miles, Naomi answered. "Not that long." A few heads turned. The answer was too measured, too exact. Keller did not notice the meaning behind it. He only heard defiance. "Smart mouth will not help you," he said. Maya's fingers trembled near the register. She wanted to speak. Naomi could see it in the way her chest rose and fell, shallow and uneven. Maya had seen the wallet before. She had seen Keller walk in with his hand closed around something. She had seen him move behind Naomi for half a second before making his accusation. But fear is not always loud. Sometimes fear is a woman behind a counter, swallowing the truth because she has rent due Friday and a little boy waiting at home. Keller turned toward Maya. "You saw her acting suspicious, correct?" The question was not a question. It was a command dressed as one. Maya's eyes flicked to Naomi. Naomi gave her the smallest look, not asking for rescue, not demanding courage, just recognizing the weight of the moment. Maya opened her mouth, then closed it. Keller smiled again. "That is what I thought." Outside, across the street, Detective Rachel Quinn adjusted the volume on her receiver. Every word was coming through clean. Inside Lewis Market, the old camera above the freezer still blinked red, but Keller had been wrong about one thing. The store camera was not the one that mattered. Naomi's coffee cup, sitting untouched on the counter, had a tiny recording device sealed beneath the cardboard sleeve, and the $5 bill she had placed beside it carried a transmitter thinner than a postage stamp. Keller believed he was building a case. In truth, he was building a confession one sentence at a time. He guided Naomi toward the door as rain blew in through the entrance. The teenage boy whispered. She did not do anything. Keller stopped and looked back, and the boy immediately lowered his eyes. That small silence told Naomi everything about East Marlow. People here had not lost their voices. They had learned the cost of using them. Keller pushed the door open and said, "Let us go." Naomi stepped into the wet evening without resisting. Her boots touched the slick sidewalk. The cruiser waited at the curb. The neighborhood watched from windows, from bus stops, from under dripping awnings, and to them it looked like another black woman being taken away for a crime she did not commit. But Naomi looked once toward the dark sedan across the street, where Rachel Quinn sat listening, and she knew the truth was already moving. Keller opened the cruiser door and leaned. Close enough for only her to hear. "No one is going to believe your version." Naomi turned her head slightly, rain shining along her cheek, and said, "They will not have to." The cruiser door closed with a soft mechanical thud, and for a few seconds the world outside became a blur of rain, lights, and faces pressed behind glass. Keller moved around to the driver's side with the slow confidence of a man who believed the night already belonged to him. Naomi sat upright in the back seat, her hands secured behind her, her eyes fixed on the reflection in the partition. She could see Keller through the mirror. She could see him checking his phone. She could see him smiling at a message before placing it face down near the radio. That smile mattered. Every detail mattered. For hours earlier, before the rain thickened over East Marlow, Naomi had stood in a quiet conference room on the 5th floor of the county administration building, looking at a wall covered with photographs, complaint forms, call logs, and printed screenshots from body cameras that had gone dark at strangely convenient moments. Officer Travis Keller's name appeared again and again, always near the center, always protected by language that sounded official enough to bury the truth. Subject resisted. Camera malfunction. Witness uncooperative. Property recovered. No misconduct found. Naomi had read those phrases so many times that they no longer felt like paperwork. They felt like gravestones for stories nobody had been allowed to finish. The first file belonged to Darius Cole, 19 years old, a community college student who had been pulled over less than 2 miles from Lewis Market while driving home from work. A knife appeared under his seat, though his mother swore she had cleaned that car the night before. The second file belonged to Mrs. Evelyn Price, 62, accused of stealing prescription pills from a pharmacy where she had been a customer for 12 years. The third belonged to a delivery driver named Jamal Reed, who lost his job after Keller claimed he found stolen electronics in the back of his van. Different people, different streets, same officer, same pattern, same strange absence of working cameras. Naomi had not spoken for a long time as Detective Rachel Quinn laid out the case. Rachel was sharp, careful, and tired in the way honest people become tired when they spend too long watching dishonest people survive. He never moves unless he controls the room, Rachel had said. He chooses places with weak cameras, frightened witnesses, and managers who do not want trouble. Naomi had looked at the map of East Marlow, at the small red circle around Lewis Market. Then we give him a room he thinks he controls, she said. That was how the plan began. Not with anger, not with revenge, with patience, with coffee, with a $5 bill, with a paper cup that looked ordinary enough to be ignored. By late afternoon, Naomi entered Lewis Market alone, just as Keller's patrol pattern brought him within 3 blocks of the store. Rachel parked across the street in the dark sedan. 2 internal affairs investigators waited farther down the block in an unmarked van. A prosecutor from the City Integrity Unit listened from another location, silent but present, because this time no one wanted another complaint marked inconclusive. Naomi had watched Keller's cruiser pass the store once, then twice. The third time it slowed. That was the moment the air changed. Maya Lewis noticed it too. Her shoulders tightened before the door even opened. Naomi saw the fear in her face and understood something painful. Keller did not have to announce himself in that neighborhood. His reputation entered rooms before he did. Now, sitting in the back of his cruiser as he pulled away from the curb, Naomi watched Lewis Market shrink behind them. Keller spoke into his radio with a voice polished clean for the record, transporting one female suspect in connection with theft. Cooperative now, but initially evasive. Naomi almost closed her eyes. There it was. The first official lie. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just placed into the system like a seed. Keller glanced at her through the mirror. Quiet back there. Naomi looked at his reflection. Just listening. He laughed under his breath. Good. That is the smartest thing you have done tonight. The cruiser rolled through East Marlow, passing boarded storefronts, basketball courts shining under rain, and apartment windows glowing warm against the gray evening. People watched the car go by, some with curiosity, some with resignation, some with the exhausted look of those who had seen enough to know what questions not to ask. Naomi thought of Darius Cole. She thought of Evelyn Price. She thought of every blank space in every report where the truth should have been. Then her wrist shifted slightly, activating the second transmitter sewn into the cuff of her jacket. In the dark sedan behind them, Rachel Quinn heard the signal change and sat forward. The operation had moved from the store to the station. Keller did not know it yet, but the walls around him were getting smaller. The station appeared at the end of Marlow Avenue like a block of tired concrete under pale security lights, its flag snapping softly in the rain, and its front windows glowing with the flat brightness of a place that never truly slept. Keller pulled into the side entrance instead of the public lot, another detail Naomi stored away without moving her head. People who believed they were doing the right thing rarely avoided the front door. The cruiser stopped near a narrow awning, and Keller stepped out first, adjusting his belt, smoothing his uniform, preparing his face before opening the back door. He wanted the station to see control. He wanted the report to match the performance. Naomi stepped onto the wet pavement and looked once at the building, not with fear, not with surprise, but with the quiet attention of someone entering the final act of a story everyone else thought had just begun. Inside, the air smelled of old coffee, floor cleaner, damp wool, and paper that had been handled by too many tired hands. Phones rang. Keyboards clicked. Officers moved between desks with folders tucked under their arms. A television mounted in the corner played local news with the sound low. Nobody looked for long when Keller brought Naomi in. That was the first thing that should have broken every heart in the room. A black woman in cuffs walked past the front desk, and most people treated it like weather. Ordinary. Expected. Part of the shift. Keller signed her in with quick strokes of a pen. Theft suspect from Lewis Market, he told the desk officer. Caught with the property in her possession. The desk officer glanced at Naomi, then back at the form. Any trouble? Keller smiled just enough. Nothing I could not handle. Naomi said nothing, but the small recording device inside her jacket captured every word, every pause, every casual lie. Across town, the city integrity prosecutor listened with headphones on, one hand resting near a legal pad already filled with notes. 2 blocks behind the station, Rachel Quinn parked the sedan in a dark municipal lot and checked the signal. Strong. Clear. Continuous. She is inside, Rachel said quietly into her phone. Do not move until Keller commits on paper. That was the rule. Words could be denied. Attitude could be excused. But a false report, a forced statement, a planted item entered into evidence. Those were doors that did not close once opened. Keller guided Naomi down a hallway where the fluorescent lights hummed overhead and old framed photographs of past police chiefs lined the walls. Most of the faces were white. Most of the smiles were stiff. Naomi's eyes passed over them without emotion. She had been in buildings like this her entire career, places built around words like service and honor, places where some people lived those words and others hid behind them. At the end of the hall, Sergeant Mark Ellison stepped out of an office with a paper cup in his hand. He was in his early 50s, gray at the temples, with the weary expression of a man who had made peace with too many compromises. His eyes landed on Naomi, then Keller, then the wallet sealed in a clear plastic bag. What do we have? He asked. Keller's answer came too fast. Same kind of situation as the coal stop. Suspect had stolen property, acted evasive, tried to talk her way out of it. Ellison looked at Naomi a little longer this time. Something moved behind his eyes, not guilt exactly, but recognition. Maybe he knew the pattern. Maybe he had always known it. Camera? Ellison asked. Keller gave a dry chuckle. Store camera is unreliable. Maya Lewis saw enough. Naomi watched Ellison absorb that name. Maya Lewis. A frightened cashier. A witness who could be shaped. A woman with too much to lose. Ellison nodded once, and that nod carried years of habit. Put her in room 2. I will review it. Review. Such a clean word for something so dirty when the outcome had already been chosen. Keller opened the interrogation room door and motioned Naomi inside. The room was small, windowless, and cold, with a metal table, 2 chairs, and a camera fixed high in the corner. Keller noticed her looking at it. That one works, he said. Naomi sat down slowly. Good, she answered. He paused, bothered again by how little fear she gave him. Then he placed the sealed wallet on the table like a trophy and pulled out a blank incident statement. Here is how this goes, he said, sliding the paper toward her. You tell us you made a mistake. You sign. Maybe you go home tonight. Naomi looked at the page, then at the pen, then at Keller's face. Outside the room, Ellison stood in the hallway pretending not to listen. Behind the station, Rachel Quinn watched the live transcript appear line by line on her tablet. Keller leaned back, confident, careless, almost bored. Or you make this harder than it needs to be. Naomi finally spoke, her voice low and steady. How many people have you said that to before me? Keller stared at Naomi as if the question had stepped into the room by itself and sat between them. For one thin second, his face changed. Not enough for a stranger to notice, but enough for Naomi. The corner of his mouth stopped moving. His eyes sharpened. His fingers paused on the pen. Then he gave a quiet laugh, the kind men use when they need to turn discomfort into authority. You think this is a conversation? He asked. Naomi looked at the statement form, its blank lines waiting for a lie to become official. I think you brought me into a room with a camera and asked me to help you write one. Keller leaned forward, planting both hands on the metal table. The wallet in the clear evidence bag sat beside his elbow, sealed, labeled, and already pretending to be truth. Careful, he said. You are making this worse. For who? Naomi asked. Outside the room, Sergeant Ellison shifted his weight in the hallway. He had not gone back to his office. He stood near the door with his coffee cooling in his hand, listening through the dull barrier of painted wood. He told himself he was supervising. He told himself Keller knew what he was doing. He told himself the paperwork would explain what his conscience could not. But something about Naomi's voice made those old excuses feel thinner than usual. In the municipal lot behind the station, Rachel Quinn watched the transcript roll across her tablet. Every word landed clean. Every threat. Every false assumption. Every invitation to confess to something Naomi had not done. Rachel glanced at the second internal affairs investigator beside her, a quiet man named Victor Hale, who had been reviewing Keller's old reports for weeks. Victor pointed to a line on his laptop. "He is using the same language," he said. Rachel nodded. "Read it." Victor read softly from a report filed 8 months earlier. Suspect was given an opportunity to admit the mistake and resolve the situation without further escalation. Rachel looked back toward the station lights. That is not procedure. That is a script. Inside room 2, Keller slid the pen closer to Naomi. "Write that you took the wallet because you needed cash. Keep it simple. Nobody wants to make this a bigger deal than it has to be." Naomi looked at the pen but did not touch it. Who is nobody? Keller's patience thinned. The store owner. The department. Me. Probably you, if you have any sense. And Maya Lewis? Naomi asked. His eyes narrowed. What about her? You said she saw enough. Keller sat back. She did. Did she say that? Or did you say it for her? Silence pressed against the room. The camera in the corner stared down without blinking. Keller tapped one finger on the table. You are very interested in a witness for someone who claims she is innocent. Naomi's expression did not change. Innocent people are usually interested in the truth. He smiled, but the smile had lost its shape. Truth is what I can prove. That was the line Rachel had been waiting for. In the car, she marked the timestamp. Victor added it to the growing file, right under the store audio, right under the radio call where Keller had described Naomi as evasive before asking her a single real question, right under the moment he claimed the camera was unreliable without checking it. Piece by piece, Keller was building the wall he would soon have to stand behind. The station around them continued its ordinary rhythm, which somehow made everything feel worse. A printer hummed. A phone rang unanswered. Somewhere down the hall, an officer laughed at a joke. The American flag in the lobby hung still beside a framed department motto that read integrity through service. Naomi had seen mottos like that before. She believed in them more than Keller ever had, and that was exactly why she had let him put cuffs on her in front of a room full of witnesses. Keller opened the door and called into the hallway. Sergeant, can you step in? Ellison entered slowly, his face controlled, his eyes avoiding Naomi's for half a second too long. Keller pointed to the form. She is refusing to cooperate. Naomi turned to Ellison. Is that what refusing to sign a false statement is called here? Ellison's throat moved. He looked at Keller. Keller looked back, firm, expectant, almost warning him not to break rhythm. The old pattern asked Ellison to nod. The old system asked him to look away. Miss Brooks, Ellison said carefully. Things go easier when people tell the truth. Naomi held his gaze. Then you should be relieved. That is why I came. Keller let out a short breath, annoyed. You came to steal a wallet. Naomi looked at the evidence bag, then at the camera, then back at Keller. Her voice dropped so low that both men leaned in without realizing it. No, Officer Keller. I came to see if you would plant one. Keller's face hardened, but the room around him seemed to lose a degree of warmth. It was not the kind of cold that came from the vents above. It was the kind that arrived when a careless man finally heard a sentence he could not easily explain away. Sergeant Ellison looked at Naomi, then at Keller, and for the first time since she had entered the station, the silence did not belong to fear. It belonged to doubt. Keller recovered first. He always did. Men like him survived by moving quickly past the moment where truth almost caught them. That is enough, he said, pointing toward Naomi without touching her. You are not in charge here. Naomi sat still, her hands resting near the edge of the table, her posture calm enough to make his anger look smaller. I never said I was. Keller turned to Ellison. She is playing games. I want her booked. Ellison did not answer right away. His eyes drifted to the wallet sealed on the table, then to the statement form still waiting and signed. A faint crease formed between his brows. Naomi could almost see the memories crossing his face, report after report, complaint after complaint, each one handled with a phrase, a signature, a stamp, and a quiet decision not to ask too many questions. Keller noticed the hesitation and stepped closer to him. "Sergeant," he said, "lower now, sharper now. We have the property. We have witness support. We have enough." "Do we?" Ellison asked before he could stop himself. The words entered the room softly, but they landed like glass breaking. Keller stared at him. Naomi did not move. The camera kept recording. In the lot behind the station, Rachel Quinn heard it and lifted her eyes from the tablet. "Ellison is wavering," Victor Hale said. Rachel held up one hand, telling him not to move yet. Not yet. They needed Keller to cross from confidence into documentation. They needed him to put the lie into the system with his own hand. Inside room 2, Keller stepped away from Ellison and grabbed the incident report from the folder. His movements were controlled but too fast, the polished performance beginning to crack at the edges. "Fine," he said. "I will write it myself." He sat down across from Naomi, clicked the pen, and began filling in the boxes. Location, time, suspect name, recovered property, behavior observed. He wrote as if the truth were an inconvenience and the form were a weapon. Naomi watched each line appear. Initially evasive. Attempted to mislead officer. Property discovered inside personal bag. Witness confirmed suspicious conduct. Every phrase was familiar. Every phrase had appeared in another file, attached to another black resident of East Marlow, another person who had been expected to shrink under the weight of official language. Naomi's voice cut softly through the scratching of the pen. "You did not ask Maya what she saw." Keller kept writing. "I know what she saw. You did not check the store video. I know that camera. You did not ask me where the wallet came from." He looked up. "I know where it came from." Naomi leaned forward just slightly. "That is the problem." Ellison's coffee cup trembled faintly in his hand. He set it down on the table near the wall, suddenly aware of his own fingers. Keller finished the report, signed his name at the bottom, then tore off the yellow copy with the satisfaction of a man closing a door. "There," he said. "Now it is official." Naomi looked at the signature. Travis Keller. Blue ink. Clear pressure marks. No hesitation. No correction. No room left for misunderstanding. Somewhere far beyond that small interrogation room, a prosecutor placed a check mark beside the word filing. Rachel Quinn exhaled once. "We have it," she said. "Move to position." Victor closed the laptop. 2 internal affairs investigators stepped out of the unmarked van and crossed the municipal lot under umbrellas. A black sport utility vehicle turned the corner at the end of the block. Inside it sat Deputy Chief Harold Bennett and Assistant City Attorney Laura McKinney, both watching the station entrance approach through the ring. But Keller could not hear any of that yet. All he heard was his own certainty. He placed the signed report in the folder, tapped it twice against the table to straighten the pages, and looked at Naomi with something close to triumph. "You should have taken the easy way out." Naomi looked at the folder, then at Ellison, then back at Keller. "So should you." Keller gave a humorless laugh. "You really think someone is coming through that door for you?" The hallway outside grew quiet. Not empty. Quiet. The kind of quiet that has footsteps inside it. Naomi's eyes shifted toward the door. Keller noticed and smiled, believing he had won. "No one is coming for you," he said. Naomi did not smile this time. She simply sat taller, as if the weight she had been carrying was no longer hers alone. "Officer Keller," she said, her voice calm, almost gentle, "they are already here." The words had barely left Naomi's mouth when the first knock came. Not loud, not frantic, just 3 firm strikes against the interrogation room door that changed the air more than any shout could have. Keller turned his head, annoyed at first, as if someone had interrupted his favorite part of a performance. Sergeant Ellison went still. His eyes moved from the door to Naomi, and this time he did not look away quickly enough to hide the fear forming behind them. Keller snapped, "We are busy." The door opened anyway. Detective Rachel Quinn stepped in first, rain still shining on the shoulders of her dark coat, her badge held flat in her hand. Behind her came Victor Hale from Internal Affairs, Assistant City Attorney Laura McKinney, and Deputy Chief Harold Bennett, whose face carried the heavy calm of a man who had already seen enough. Keller stood so quickly his chair scraped backward across the floor. "What is this?" he demanded. Rachel did not answer him. She looked at Naomi. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Keller laughed once, confused and offended at the same time. "Why are you asking her?" No one laughed with him. That was the moment the room began to turn. Not quickly, Not dramatically. Slowly, like a lock being opened from the other side. Rachel stepped to Naomi's chair and placed a small key on the table. Permission? She asked. Naomi gave a single nod. Keller's eyes widened. Permission for what? Rachel unlocked the cuffs from Naomi's wrists with deliberate care, and the sound of the metal opening was quieter than the sound of it closing had been, but somehow it carried farther. Ellison took half a step back. Keller looked at Deputy Chief Bennett. Sir, I can explain. Bennett's eyes moved to the signed report in the folder. I believe you already did. Naomi rubbed one wrist gently, not to show pain, but to remind the room what had been done in the name of procedure. Then Rachel placed a sealed evidence pouch on the table. Inside were the coffee cup sleeve, the $5 bill, and a tiny black recording device no larger than a shirt button. Keller stared at it. His face lost color in small stages. First the lips, then the cheeks, then the space around his eyes. Victor opened a tablet and turned the screen toward the table. The video began without sound at first. Lewis Market. The counter. Naomi standing still. Keller entering. The wallet in his left hand before he ever reached her bag. Ellison swallowed. Laura McKinney pressed her pen against her legal pad, but did not write yet. She did not need to. The room was writing itself. Rachel tapped the screen, and the audio came alive. Keller's voice filled the space, clear and sharp. Funny how it always ends up in your bag. Then another line. Camera's been acting up all week. Then the radio call. Initially evasive. Then the interrogation. Write that you took the wallet because you needed cash. Each sentence returned to him stripped of power, no longer a tool, no longer a threat, just evidence. Keller shook his head. That is taken out of context. Naomi stood. Slow. Calm. The plain brown jacket shifted as she reached inside and removed a leather credential case. She opened it and placed it on the table beside his signed report. The badge caught the cold light of the interrogation room. Captain Naomi Brooks. Internal Affairs. For the first time that night, Keller had nothing ready. No insult. No report. No smirk. Just his own breathing, shallow and uneven, inside a room he no longer controlled. Naomi looked at him, and her voice did not rise even 1 inch. You did not arrest a suspect, Officer Keller. You exposed yourself. Keller stared at the badge as if the metal itself had spoken. Captain Naomi Brooks. Internal Affairs. The name sat on the table beside his signed report, and every lie he had written seemed to shrink under the weight of it. For years, Keller had trusted paper more than people. Paper could be shaped. Paper could be filed. Paper could make fear look like guilt and prejudice look like procedure. But now the paper had turned against him, carrying his own signature at the bottom like a door locking from the outside. Deputy Chief Bennett reached for the folder, opened it, and read the first page without changing expression. You documented that the wallet was recovered from her personal bag, he said. Keller swallowed. Based on what I observed. Rachel Quinn tapped the tablet again. The video froze on a clear image of Keller entering Lewis Market with the wallet already visible in his left hand. Laura McKinney finally wrote something on her legal pad, her pen moving slowly, almost mercifully, as if the facts no longer needed speed to be powerful. Victor Hale placed 3 more folders on the table. Darius Cole, Evelyn Price, Jamal Reed. Each name landed like a witness stepping into the room. Naomi watched Keller look at the folders and recognized the moment a man realizes the past is not buried. It has simply been waiting for the right person to dig. These cases are being reopened, Victor said. All property records, reports, body camera gaps, witness statements, and supervisory approvals will be reviewed. Ellison closed his eyes for half a second. That was all. Half a second. But Naomi saw the collapse inside him. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just a man finally understanding that silence had a paper trail too. Deputy Chief Bennett turned to him. Sergeant Ellison, you are relieved of supervisory duties pending review. Ellison nodded once, his face pale, his voice barely steady. Yes, sir. Keller looked from one face to another, searching for the old room, the old rules, the old protection. He found none of it. I was doing my job, he said, but the words sounded smaller than he expected. Naomi stepped closer to the table. Your job was to protect the public, not select targets, not write endings before asking questions, not turn a badge into a hiding place. Keller's mouth opened, then closed. There was nothing in the training manual for this. No report language for being exposed by the woman he thought he had trapped. Outside the interrogation room, the station had gone quiet in pieces. First one desk, then another. Officers stood in doorways, pretending not to watch while watching everything. The same hallway that had ignored Naomi when she arrived now followed her with wide eyes as Rachel gathered the evidence and Laura made the formal call to the City Integrity Unit. Keller's service weapon was collected according to policy. His badge was removed from his uniform and placed into a clear envelope. No shouting, no spectacle, no revenge, just procedure, the real kind. The kind he had spent years twisting into something unrecognizable. When Keller was escorted out of room 2, he did not look at Naomi. He looked at the floor, as if the tiles might offer him a version of the story where he was still in control. But the floor had heard everything too. Naomi remained in the room for a moment after the others left, her wrists still marked lightly from the cuffs, her credential case open on the table. Rachel stood beside her, quiet. "You knew he would do it," Rachel said. Naomi looked at the frozen video on the tablet, at the exact frame where Keller's hand betrayed him before his mouth ever did. "No," Naomi answered. "I gave him the chance not to." Across town, Maya Lewis sat behind the counter of her store, staring at the empty space where Naomi had stood. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number that simply said, "You are safe to tell the truth now." Maya covered her mouth, and for the first time all night, she breathed like someone who had been holding her lungs hostage. Somewhere else, Darius Cole sat on the edge of his bed as his mother read the message that his case would be reviewed. He did not celebrate. Not yet. But his shoulders dropped 1 inch, and sometimes 1 inch is where justice begins. Back at the station, Naomi closed her credential case and looked through the small square window in the interrogation room door. The building had not changed. Same lights, same walls, same flag in the lobby, but something inside it had shifted. A badge had fallen, a lie had been named, and the truth, quiet as rain, had finally entered the record. By midnight, the rain over East Marlow had softened into a mist, thin enough to catch the streetlights and turn every sidewalk into a faded silver line. Naomi Brooks stepped out of the station through the front entrance this time, not the side door Keller had chosen, and she paused beneath the flag as the night air touched her face. Her wrists still carried faint marks, but her posture had not changed. She stood the same way she had stood in Lewis Market, the same way she had sat in room 2, calm enough to make the truth feel stronger than fear. Behind her, the building hummed with consequences. Computers were being searched. Lockers were being sealed. Reports were being pulled from archives that had not been opened in years. Names that once lived only in complaint folders were now being spoken out loud by people with the authority to listen. Darius Cole, Evelyn Price, Jamal Reed, Maya Lewis. Not statistics, not problems, not lines and paperwork. People. Across the street, Rachel Quinn waited beside the dark sedan with 2 cups of coffee, one already cooling in her hand. Naomi walked toward her, and for a moment neither woman said anything. They just watched the station, the wet pavement, the officers moving behind the glass with slower steps than before. Finally, Rachel handed her the cup. "You could have ended it sooner," she said. Naomi wrapped both hands around the warmth. "If I had, they would have called it a misunderstanding." Rachel looked toward the entrance where Keller had been taken out less than an hour earlier, no longer smiling, no longer performing, no longer protected by the room he thought he owned. And now, Naomi took a slow breath. Now it is a pattern. That word mattered. Pattern. Because one cruel moment can be dismissed by the people who do not want to see it. One bad report can be called an error. One frightened witness can be pressured into silence. But a pattern is different. A pattern has weight. A pattern has memory. A pattern says this did not begin tonight, and it will not be allowed to continue tomorrow. The next morning, East Marlow woke to the kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the gutters still drip and the air smells washed, but everyone can feel that something has changed. Lewis Market opened at 7 o'clock, just like always. Maya arrived early, unlocked the front door, and stood behind the counter staring at the spot where the coffee had spilled. For years, she had believed fear was the price of surviving. That morning, she gave her full statement. She told the truth about the wallet. She told the truth about Keller. She told the truth about the other times she had stayed silent, because silence felt safer than courage. When she finished, her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear. Darius Cole came in later with his mother. He did not say much. He just stood near the register, looking around the store as if the walls themselves had finally stopped accusing him. Naomi met him there in plain clothes. No crowd, no cameras, no speech prepared. "Your case is being reviewed," she told him. "So are the others." Darius looked at her for a long moment, his face carrying the guarded hope of someone who had been disappointed too many times to trust good news quickly. "Does that mean it gets fixed?" he asked. Naomi did not give him a pretty lie. She gave him something better. "It means the truth gets a record. And once the truth has a record, it gets harder to bury." By the end of the week, Keller's reports were no longer treated as routine. They were evidence. Ellison's approvals were no longer treated as oversight. They were questions. The department announced an independent review, and for the first time in years, people in East Marlow lined up not to complain into silence, but to be heard. Naomi watched it happen without celebration. Justice was not fireworks. It was not one grand moment where every wound disappeared. Justice was a door opening after years of being locked. It was a young man hearing his name without shame attached to it. It was a cashier sleeping through the night because she had told the truth and survived it. It was a badge being reminded that power without integrity is only costume jewelry under fluorescent light. And somewhere in the official record, beneath dates, signatures, evidence numbers, and witness statements, the real story remained simple. He planted a wallet to bury the truth, but the truth had already walked in wearing her face.